que está impulsando la disminución de estas poblaciones, pero nunca antes los gobiernos habían tenido tanto apoyo para implementarla. Panamá reconoce que tenemos la responsabilidad de manejar estas especies y tengamos en cuenta que es solo regular. Podemos continuar comercializando donde las poblaciones estén sanas y sostenibles. Una propuesta a nivel de familia también facilitaría la implementación para todas las partes, incluyendo la Secretaría CITES. Únanse a nosotros para hacer de la CITES COP19 una COP de liderazgo oceánico, donde finalmente pongamos el comercio mundial de aletas de tiburón bajo la regulación completa de CITES y prevengamos la extinción de los tiburones requiem o carcarinidae en todo el mundo. Y por ende, evitamos la extinción de la humanidad, ya que sin océanos no hay humanidad y sin tiburones el equilibrio del océano colapsa. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Panama, for your introduction, and we note you suggested an amendment to have a 12-month delay before the species enters into the appendices. If that's a change that is being proposed under Rule 24.2, then really I need to know that that is a proposal from all the proponents, of which there are several, many, well, all the proponents, I think, are represented in the room. So just so that I am clear that there is support for this from all the proponents, I would ask them just to raise their flags if they do not agree with the proposed amendment. So, so there are parties that have pressed their buttons already. Please don't press your button just now, unless you are a proponent and you wish to say that you do not support the proposed amendment. I need to know if this is an amendment under Rule 24.2 or whether it's just an amendment under Rule 25. So I see Sri Lanka and Senegal. You are co-proponents. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. This is just to confirm our support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senegal. I was trying to do it in a negative sense. So, Gabon, is that the same for you? Are you indicating your support or not?
Non, tu dois parler.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Gabon est co-auteur de cette proposition et remercie déjà par avance tous les pays qui la soutiennent. Les faits indéniables sont que les requins sont essentiels pour augmenter la résilience des écosystèmes et l'abondance des poissons.
Well, one moment, Gabon. I'm only asking one question at the moment, and parties who've asked for the floor, I will open the floor in a minute, so you'll all get a turn, but I was just asking all the co-proponents, Gabon, if they support the proposed amendment. And I asked co-proponents only to press that button if they didn't support. So can you be clear, do you support the proposed amendment introduced by Panama? You have the floor.
Oui, merci Monsieur le Président. Oui, nous reviendrons tout à l'heure si vous nous le permettez. Merci.
Thank you, Gabon. I think there are no other co-proponents that indicate any objection to that, so I think we can take that as an amendment to the proposal under Rule 24.2, where all the co-proponents have indicated that they're happy with that proposal. I will now open the floor for comments from parties. So if you wish to press your buttons. All right, thank you. I see first Iceland. There are quite a number of proponents wanting to speak, and I'll try and do that, but I would quite like to hear from other countries. So Iceland, then Sri Lanka.
Chair, as we are now entering the discussion on marine species, an area of particular importance to my country, I would like to make a general point on the issue of scientific advice, in particular the divergence of views between different institutions, and that is exactly the case in the proposal under discussion. It has always been Icelandic policy in different fora to look for the best available scientific advice whenever possible. This has been the basis for our successful fisheries policy over the years. In preparing for this meeting, we noted that there is considerable discrepancy between the advice given by the expert panel of the FAO on the one hand and the CITES Secretariat on the other. This puts the minister in question in the difficult position of having to choose between conflicting advice from two respected international institutions. Over the years, we have had extensive cooperation with FAO, and the presence of ICES experts on their panel add to the weight we attach to their advice. It goes without saying that we also have the greatest respect for the CITES Secretariat. We know that there is an organized dialogue between the two and established contacts, but it has not led to coordinated advice. We urge both institutions to explore ways and means to establish a more active coordination. In the case that different approaches are irreconcilable, it would be helpful if an explanatory note could be attached to explain the divergence. I would like to ask the institutions to take note of this and have it recorded in the report. Furthermore, I would like to follow precedent in previous COPs and request a secret ballot if proposals to amend the appendices for marine species come to a vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Iceland. If we get to a vote, then I will bear that request in mind. Of course, we're not there yet. I just wanted to make one other point, actually, before continuing with the debate, as there has been quite a bit of clapping and cheering and so on, and I would request parties kindly to, and observers, to desist from that. I said in my opening remarks I wanted the atmosphere in this committee to be collegiate and collaborative and constructive, and maybe expressing, although views I know are held very passionately, maybe expressing them like that is maybe not the most decorous way of conducting our business. So I'd ask you just to keep our approach as professional as possible. So I have a large number of requests from the floor, including from co-proponents. Co-proponents, you've had a long introduction provided by Panama. I'll give you the floor, but I ask you to keep your remarks very brief. And I see observers pressing their buttons too. Please, observers, I've not invited you to take the floor yet, so I will do that later if there's time. So I'll give the floor to Sri Lanka, then Senegal, then Burkina Faso.
Thank you, Chair. I promise to keep it within the 3 minutes. Sri Lanka, as a co-sponsor on the Panama Shark proposal, are appreciative of the strong support extended by governments across the world, echoing our views. Sri Lanka is, of course, a shark fishing nation, and we capture several of the species included in this proposal. And our coastal communities rely on these species for food security and fisher livelihoods. Of course, an Appendix 2 listing will not impact national catch and consumption, but given that it will regulate international trade and therefore alleviate the pressure on these species by encouraging additional management, we value its intention. Because if left unlisted, when these shark populations collapse, we shall lose biodiversity in addition to losing all associated livelihoods and an essential source of animal protein. And this concern is very valid. In fact, even within this proposal, there are 2 species that are considered to be possibly extinct by the IUCN Red List. We note that implementation can sometimes be challenging. However, we are confident that with all the tools available to identify species and to develop NDFs, and by maintaining the original Panama proposal as it stands with the 12-month delayed implementation, we shall overcome these challenges as in previous years. And again, a challenging pathway is far better than the alternative scenario where we lose our biodiversity. However, most importantly, the science is clear. Requiem sharks are facing declines as a result of international trade, and their declines fulfill the CITES Appendix 2 listing criteria. Therefore, we urge all parties to join us and help mitigate unregulated declines and ensure sustainable fisheries to allow our fishers to continue their livelihoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Sri Lanka. I'll give the floor to Senegal. Again, I ask you to be brief as a co-proponent. We've had a long introduction. So it'll then be Senegal, followed by Burkina Faso, then Japan.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je serai très bref. Le Sénégal est co-auteur de la proposition des requins requiem. Les espèces de cette famille ont subi des déclins récents et rapides de plus de 70%, et certaines espèces sont éteintes dans certaines régions. Elles se reproduisent lentement, ce qui les rend plus vulnérables à la surexploitation pour leur chair et leurs ailerons. En effet, de nombreuses espèces qui faisaient autrefois l'objet d'un commerce en grand volume ont été décimées au point qu'elles ne peuvent plus être capturées ni commercialisées par la suite. Malgré l'exploitation massive et largement non réglementée de ces espèces et le commerce de leurs parties, le commerce international de ces espèces reste totalement non réglementé, permettant à une exploitation non durable de se poursuivre. De plus, il est difficile, voire impossible, d'identifier les ailerons des espèces inscrites comme étant en danger critique d'extinction ou en danger sous la liste rouge de l'UICN des membres de cette famille dont l'état de conservation n'est pas aussi grave. Il est essentiel que toute la famille soit inscrite. Pour les pays à faible capacité, cela facilitera grandement l'application de la réglementation et empêchera également de perdre encore plus ces précieuses ressources naturelles. Monsieur le Président, nous demandons instamment à toutes les parties de soutenir l'inscription de cette famille à l'annexe 2 afin de garantir que tout commerce international de ces espèces soit légal et durable. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Senegal. I give the floor to Burkina Faso, followed by Japan, then Pakistan.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Nous félicitons encore pour la conduite plus avisée de cette session. Nous remercions le Panama et les 40 autres co-auteurs d'avoir fait cette proposition. Et conscient de la crise croissante de la biodiversité, le Burkina Faso soutient la proposition et nous espérons que tous les partis présents voteront en sa faveur. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Burkina Faso. I next give the floor to Japan, followed by Pakistan.
Thank you, Chairperson. The Requiem Shark proposal 37, takes the family listing approach, while the proponents are giving too much priority to listing the entire family as its entirety. Thus, it has too many species of 54 species without a proper scientific basis, and too many technical and administrative problems. In Japan's view, such a large number of the listings prevent the party from examining the listing proposal species by species based on the scientific evidence. This will result in the undermining the conservation of the species in concern of their population status. From this point of view, Japan appreciates the tremendous work of the scientific advice by FAO Expert Advisory Panel, which was established based on the MOU between the CITES and FAO. The shark expert examined the listing proposal species by species in detail in light of the biological listing criteria in such a short notice, advising that most of 54 species do not meet CITES listing criteria. Based on their assessment, Japan is of the view that Proposal 37 should be rejected. At the same time, Japan recognizes there is a divergent view on which the species should be listed or not to conserve the 90 lead species. However, at least Japan does not accept the listing of the 35 so-called look-alike species. Japan thinks that the look-alike listing criteria is abused in this proposal. FAO Expert Advisory Panel concludes that there are no rationale for the listing as many as 35 look-alike species in Appendix 2. We do not accept the abuse of the look-alike listing criteria to expand the appendix listing to the species that do not have any concern in their resources status and trade condition. Also, 35 look-alike species include a blue shark, whose stock is assessed healthy and sustainably harvested under the appropriate management measure in RFMOs. Also, all fish caught are held on the board a fishing vessel and landed. All fishing body are utilized without any wasting. The listing of these species will simply overburn administrative process and will not contribute to the conservation of the 19 lead species at all. Consequently, it will even create the negative socio-economic impact, such as a threat to the food security, local economy, and livelihood, and sustainable fisheries development. Given this serious concern and divergent view, Japan would like to propose the excluding 35 look-alike species from the proposal 37 to reduce its scope in accordance with the Rule 25.5 of the Rule of Procedure of the Conference of the Party. The proposal is described in Info 77, which is publicly available on the CITES website. Our proposal is to seek the consensus for the conservation of the 90 lead species. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Japan. And we note your suggested amendment. You referred to an information document, but to introduce it here into the committee, I need you to read out your precise text, how your amendment would read, so that everyone is aware of it and can have it interpreted. So if you could read out your proposed amendment, please.
Okay. Thank you, Chairperson. Japan's amendment proposal is just to the proposed amendment to the Requiem Shark family proposal, the proposal 37. As I mentioned about the proposal 37, in particular, Japan has a much concern that the 35 look-alike species include the blue shark that is commercially harvested all over the world, assessed as abundant in the stock by the regional fisheries management organization, and used under the appropriate stock management. Around the 100,000 tons of the blue shark are sustainably harvested annually in more than 60 countries worldwide. In other words, blue shark are not in the endangered species.
So Japan, sorry to interrupt you. What I'm asking for is the precise wording of your amendment. What precisely are you seeking to introduce? I don't need the rationale for it. I just need to know the precise wording so it can be read into the record. Thank you.
So thank you, Chair. In our amendment proposal for the proposal 37, considering the rationale of the amendment mentioned above, we propose excluding the 35 so-called look-alike species below from the proposal 37 to reduce its scope in line with the Rule 25.5 of Rule of Procedure of the Conference of Party. Exclusion of the following the genus species from the proposal 37. The 37 genus Calcahinne, genus Astrogomopondon, Pondento, genus Locosodon, genus Nasrolamia, genus Lamiopsis, genus Negoroprion, genus Prionas, genus Lizoloprinodon, genus Scolodon, genus Trienodon, and any other putative species of the family Calcahinne that doesn't satisfy criterion A in the Annex 2B of the resolution Conf 9.24. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Japan. Talking to myself now. So I now understand your suggested amendment proposal, and I think the initial bit of it is clear, where it talks about exclusion of the following genus and species from proposal 37, and it makes reference to 1, 2, 3, several genus. The text at the end, so I can accept that as reducing the scope of the proposal. The text at the end, which begins, and any other putative species, I don't think that is acceptable as a proposed amendment because you can reduce the scope. You can propose an amendment to reduce the scope or to make it more precise. The final part of the amendment, to me, makes it less precise. It makes it vague because it's talking about any other species that doesn't satisfy criterion A and so on. But of course, there's no indication as to who decides which species or genus meets the criteria. Ultimately, it's this conference of the parties that makes the decision on what meets the criteria or not, and then what is included in the CITES appendices. So I'm very happy with the first part of your suggested amendment up to the words genus Trienodon, but I'm afraid I can't accept the final part of your proposed amendment, and I hope you understand the reasons for that. Is that okay, Japan? You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to clarify your intention. Whether you are not accepting our amendment proposal because of our ambiguity in our amendment proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Japan. I am prepared to accept your amendment proposal up until the end of genus Trienodon. But the final part of it, I can't accept, where it begins, and any other putative species of family Carcharinidae that doesn't satisfy criterion A in Annex 2B of Resolution Conf 924 Rev Cop 17. It's that final text I don't feel I can accept because it doesn't provide precision. This is an amendment proposal, and there is no indication of what these other putative species are and who decides what they are. So I'm very happy with your amendment, as I said, up until the end of genus Trienodon. Is that acceptable to you, Japan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your clarification. Actually, we tweaked this amendment text from the original proposal. So we don't think that we remain very ambiguous about our proposal. Also, I want to draw your attention to the Rule 24.2 of the Rules of the Procedure. According to the Rules of Procedure, representative of the parties can make amendment to reduce its scope or make it more precise. So it doesn't say that we need to make a proposal which reduces the scope and make it more precise. So I don't understand the chair's suggestion. I would appreciate your more clarification. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Japan. And you are correct that in the proposal they do use those terms, but the actual proposal, as we interpret it, is so that what would be listed in the appendices would be Carcharinidae species, or requiem sharks. The additional text about and any other putative species wouldn't be included in the appendices. So what we're trying to establish with your amendment is precisely which taxa in the family you wish to exclude from the listing. So in future, it might read Carcharinidae species except for genus Carcharinus, Isogomphadon, etc. So that is why that other text at the end isn't necessary and doesn't provide clarity. So it's just to make sure your amendment is very precise, because that text is in the supporting statement, but there's lots of other stuff in the supporting statement as well. Is that okay? So we have that amendment, and with the exclusion of that language at the end, then clearly that is open for debate as it reduces the scope. So parties can comment on that as they go through. One moment. I now give the floor, I think I had Pakistan, followed by the Maldives and Papua New Guinea.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. Since this is the first time I am addressing the floor, please allow me to congratulate you on your election as Chair. Let me also congratulate the Republic of Panama for hosting the CoP19 of CITES in such a wonderful manner and extending warm welcome to all the participants. Pakistan has approximately 1,365 kilometers long coastline and hosts different species of sharks. Therefore, we support the Panama Shark proposal and emphasize the need to maintain the original list of species included within it to enable effective implementation. Further, given that Appendix 2 listing calls for sustainable trade and not a prohibition on trade, we view this listing to be beneficial in supporting fishing industry. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Pakistan. And then I think I had Papua New Guinea, followed by Monaco. Papua New Guinea, you have the floor.
This is the first time Papua New Guinea taking the floor, and I want to congratulate you, Chair, for your appointment as the Chair for COM1. And in addition, I want to convey our heartfelt thanks to the Panamanian government for the gracious hospitality in the last days. Papua New Guinea is the rare stage of the Carcharinus species, and we would like to air our view on the Proposal 37 on the inclusion of all species in the family according with Article 2, Paragraph 2AB of the Convention and satisfy Criterion A and Annex 2B of the Conference 9.2 CoP19. Mr. Chair, according to the FAO Expert Panel Summary Report on Proposal 37, on the consideration of proposal for amendment of Appendix 1 and 2, the proposal to list all 96 species of Carcharinidae in Appendix 2 of the CITES does not meet the CITES criteria as a single proposal. The FAO Expert Panel analyzed available scientific data and technical information for the species in Proposal 37 and determined 3 methods CITES criteria listing. 12 does not meet the criteria listing, and 4 species have insufficient data to make a determination. The FAO expert panel recommend the consideration of separate proposal for species assessment to meet CITES criteria Appendix 2. Mr. Chair, Papua New Guinea would like to oppose the proposal for Carcharinidae to be included to CITES Appendix 2, where it will add additional stress to the current capacity and the resources the government has to meet the CITES requirement. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Papua New Guinea. I now give the floor to Monaco, to be followed by Guatemala.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Prenant la parole pour la première fois, à mon tour, je souhaite remercier le gouvernement et la population du Panama pour son accueil chaleureux, le secrétariat pour l'organisation de cette conférence, et je vous félicite pour votre nomination en tant que président de ce comité et pour la tenue des débats. La Principauté de Monaco fait part de son plein soutien à la proposition numéro 37 visant à inscrire les requins requiem à l'annexe 2 de la CITES et remercie grandement le Panama pour son leadership et ses efforts dans l'élaboration de cette proposition, ainsi que tous les co-parrains. Monaco appuie cette proposition car les espèces visées sont classées comme étant en danger ou en danger critique d'extinction sur la liste rouge des espèces menacées de l'UICN, et ce, en raison notamment d'une mortalité due à une pêche non durable, motivée au moins en partie par la demande du commerce international pour leurs produits. De plus, considérant que la famille des requins requiem compte 54 espèces dont 68% sont d'ores et déjà menacées d'extinction, Monaco soutient l'inscription de toutes les espèces de la famille des requins requiem en tant qu'espèces semblables, pour éviter le commerce illégal et faciliter la mise en application par les gouvernements. Monaco considère la CITES comme un outil fort et efficace pour éviter que le commerce international d'une espèce ne conduise à sa disparition et pour lutter contre la pêche illégale, non réglementée et non déclarée. L'inscription en annexe 2 à la CITES constitue une mesure indispensable pour la sauvegarde de ces espèces et garantirait le maintien d'un commerce international réglementé, durable, légal et traçable. Nous acceptons donc la proposition, nous demandons à l'appuyer avec le délai proposé par les co-auteurs, mais sans réduction au niveau des espèces. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Monaco. I'll give the floor next to Guatemala, followed by Chile. I noticed that there's quite a few co-proponent countries requesting the floor, and we've already had statements from 3 proponents. We will come back to the proponent countries later on. I have an extremely long list in front of me, so I ask you all to be very brief and precise in terms of your interventions, indicating whether you support the proposal or not, whether you support any particular amendments. Noting that the co-proponents have already amended their own proposal. So I give the floor now to Guatemala, followed by Chile.
Gracias, señor presidente. Agradecemos a Panamá por su hospitalidad y por traer a Latinoamérica a la COP19. En Guatemala estamos avanzando en la caracterización de la pesquería y también en la expansión de las áreas protegidas marinas. Tengo que hacer ver que para fortalecer este impulso es importante contar con mecanismos financieros internacionales para implementar acciones robustas de monitoreo, creación de capacidades, determinación de adquisición legal y aplicación de la ley. De esta manera, Guatemala respalda la propuesta 37 e invitamos a otros países a que se sumen a este esfuerzo. Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Guatemala, and for being brief. I now give the floor to Chile, to be followed by Indonesia and Fiji.
Buenas tardes, señor presidente. Junto con saludar y agradecer la excelente organización del Gobierno de Panamá en la 19ª versión de la COP y también de los comités permanentes, quisiéramos manifestar que, de acuerdo a la revisión de la propuesta 37 y los criterios técnicos propuestos en el documento CONF 9.24, específicamente en el anexo 2A, criterios A y B, y también en el anexo 2B, consideramos que se cumplen las condiciones para la inclusión de la familia carcarínide en el apéndice 2. Consciente con la responsabilidad con que Chile asume sus compromisos internacionales y como país comprometido con la conservación de la biodiversidad del océano y el uso sostenible de los recursos, solicitamos la consideración de un plazo para implementación de 24 meses, con el fin de permitir, en ese tiempo, desarrollar los procedimientos, ajustes reglamentarios y presupuestarios y obtener los financiamientos que hagan posible una implementación eficiente y oportuna de esta medida. Muchas gracias.
Okay, thank you, Chile, and I note that you've also introduced another amendment now for a 24-month delay, and again, we can debate that, and we will see how many amendments we end up with at the end, but But thank you for that. And now give the floor to Indonesia, followed by Fiji, and then the Gambia. Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Indonesia share the same view with Japan regarding the proposal 37 with the following reasons: that the shark species in the family of Carcarinidae have different biological characteristics and threat levels. Only a few species meet the uplisting criteria into Appendix 2. The second, not all the shark species in the family of Carcarinidae are used for export purposes. And the third one, currently the data related to the biological and population status are still limited, which making it difficult to prepare the NDF documents and also implement CITES regulation regarding traceability and sustainability. Thus, Indonesia proposed to look the proposal by Japan regarding the amendment of the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Indonesia. I now give the floor to Fiji, followed by the Gambia, then Peru.
Thank you, Chair. As this is the first time that Fiji has taken the floor, we wish to congratulate you on your appointment as the chair, and to the government and people of Panama for hosting what has already been a fantastic COP19 so far. Fiji strongly supports proposal number 37 on Requin shark family to be included in Appendix 2. As an archipelago of more than 330 islands, our marine environment and the life that inhabits it are a core part of our identity and our culture. In order to safeguard these elements for future generations, we must strive towards improving the management and sustainability of our fisheries, including that of sharks. Fiji firmly believes that this is an approach that will assist with management of species that are deemed to be at an ever-increasing risk of extinction. We have heard arguments that should this proposal pass, it will create unnecessary administrative burden for parties to implement and will hurt the livelihoods of fishers. Fiji believes that there is a greater risk of collapse of the fisheries that the fishers rely on for their livelihood from overexploitation, and we strongly believe that we must take steps to regulate the trade now before it is too late. The trends are clear, and every day that these species go unregulated, the faster they will vanish from our waters. Therefore, Fiji strongly supports proposal number 37 on Requiem shark family to be included in Appendix 2 as proposed by Panama on behalf of the co-proponents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Fiji. I give the floor now to the Gambia, followed by Peru, then Egypt.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Since this is the first time the Gambia to take the floor in this committee, therefore we would like to express our sincere and our profound gratitude to the government and the people of Panama for the warm welcome and the hospitality they have accorded to us throughout. In the same vein, we would also like to congratulate you for the election, election as the chair of this committee. Mr. Chair, sadly, nearly 70% of the family of Carcarinidae is considered threatened according to the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species categories and criteria. Indeed, only 7 species of 56 in the family are considered least concern. A family of shark that is in peril as such and highly traded needs monitoring and transparency. Therefore, the Gambia support this proposal. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, the Gambia. I now give the floor to Peru, followed by Egypt, then Mauritania.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. El Perú se encuentra comprometido con la implementación de las disposiciones establecidas por las CITES para la gestión sostenible de los tiburones. Entre las principales medidas que podemos destacar se encuentra el establecimiento de vedas, cuotas de pesca y factores de conversión para tiburones martillo, la prohibición de captura del tiburón ballena, así como la prohibición del desembarque de aletas sueltas de tiburones en territorio nacional. Asimismo, el país ha jugado un rol activo en la implementación de las actividades dispuestas en la red COP 12.6 sobre conservación y gestión de los tiburones, tal como la determinación de las existencias de las especies antes de su inclusión al apéndice 2 y la implementación de medidas de control para el tránsito y transbordo. El Perú conoce la vulnerabilidad de las especies de tiburones por su posición en la cadena trófica y su importante rol en los ecosistemas, así como también por la relación existente entre las comunidades de pescadores artesanales de nuestro país y los recursos hidrobiológicos que nuestro mar posee por ser uno de los más productivos del mundo. Dichas comunidades ejercen la pesca para el consumo de carne, siendo la venta de aletas un subproducto derivado de la actividad de subsistencia del pescador. Queremos resaltar que hacemos la preocupación sobre el hecho de que esta propuesta plantea la inclusión de géneros completos que involucra medio centenares de especies bajo el criterio de semejanza. Hacemos un llamado a las partes a reflexionar sobre la necesidad de afinar estos criterios con el fin de asegurar una implementación efectiva, incidiendo en el uso de criterios comunes para los dictámenes de extracción no perjudicial y las medidas de control, recomendando evitar la inclusión de especies cuyo estado de conservación no está siendo afectado por el comercio internacional. Habiendo realizado un análisis integral de la propuesta, advertimos que la inclusión de las especies de tiburón gris arrecife, tiburón arenero, toyo picudo y el tiburón ganges sí cumplen con los criterios para su inclusión en el apéndice 2, lo que consideramos contribuirá a la conservación de estas especies. En lo que respecta a la inclusión de los otros géneros de la familia Carcarinidae, recomendamos la generación de información adicional que permita sustentar con mayor solvencia su inclusión en el apéndice 2 de las CITES, como es el caso de Prionace glauca, que no cumple con el criterio de semejanza según lo establecido en la ROSCOF 9.24 sobre criterios para enmendar los apéndices, por lo que manifestamos nuestro apoyo parcial a esta propuesta, a fin de proponer un punto intermedio y tomando en cuenta la participación de otras partes, podríamos apoyar la propuesta si se excluye la inclusión del género Prionace en la propuesta. Gracias, señor presidente.
So just to go back to you, Peru, if we understood your final comment correctly, you could support, but not if it contained Prionace glauca. Is that correct? And if so, are you proposing that as an amendment?
Sí, así es.
Okay, thank you. Just so we could clarify. So again, another amendment which reduces the scope, so is acceptable for discussion. I have a very long, very long list of parties, and I'm closing the list now. So if the technicians could make sure that we don't have any more parties added to it. I will now give the floor, I think I said Egypt, followed by Mauritania, then Antigua and Barbuda. So Egypt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Egypt is in favor of the adoption of 37 proposals to list the requiem shark family in Appendix 2. For the requiem shark family that is heavily caught and treated, CITES Appendix 2 may be the only way to ensure that global demand doesn't drive this population to extinction. As we know, the listing in Appendix 2 will protect the livelihood and food resources for coastal communities for the future. A vote in favor of this full proposal is a vote in favor of humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Egypt. And we'll now give the floor to Mauritania, followed by Antigua and Barbuda, and then Canada.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Donc, la Mauritanie aimerait également apporter en tout cas sa pierre à l'édifice. Ce débat qui est là sur les requins, j'aimerais tout de suite en tout cas porter à la connaissance de cette Assemblée que la Mauritanie a dédié plus d'un tiers de son espace maritime et côtier à la préservation. Et donc, nous sommes résolument engagés, en tout cas à la gestion durable des ressources vivantes de la mer. D'ailleurs, c'est dans cet espace qu'ont été découvertes récemment des espèces de requins, dont d'ailleurs un poisson paille. Donc, c'est vous dire que cela ne nous fait pas peur, en tout cas, de nous engager dans la préservation. Seulement, nous constatons, ou en tout cas, nous considérons que cette approche famille est très problématique, surtout quand on sait qu'elle englobe beaucoup d'espèces. C'est une proposition donc très complexe et qui interroge surtout quant à sa mise en œuvre au niveau des aspects techniques et des aspects administratifs. Bien sûr que sans en tout cas préjudice également aux aspects socio-économiques qui ne doivent pas être piétinés, nous restons en tout cas convaincus que cette inscription doit s'adosser sur des avis scientifiques robustes et pertinents. Mais malheureusement, aujourd'hui, nous assistons en tout cas à une situation on ne peut plus, en tout cas, rare, parce que nos institutions de référence au niveau scientifique ne parlent pas de la même voix, au sujet, en tout cas, de ces propositions d'inscription, je veux dire l'avis qui a été émis par la FAO au sujet de ces inscriptions, mais aussi le secrétariat et d'autres organisations, bien sûr, de préservation, dont bien sûr l'UICN. Il faut donc en tout cas, mentionner que la FAO a toujours été l'institution de référence, mais je pense que ces inscriptions ne sont pas en droite ligne avec, en tout cas, ce que préconise la FAO. Aussi, nous aimerions donc dire tout simplement que, en tout cas, cette approche famille, nous la trouvons un peu exagérée. On aurait bien pu comprendre une approche qui, en tout cas, s'inspirerait de certaines espèces côtières ou hauturières, au regard, bien sûr, de leur vulnérabilité par rapport à la pêche ou autre. Mais mettre toutes ces espèces dans le même sac, nous pensons que c'est une situation très complexe et qui ne participe pas, en tout cas, de la préservation. C'est pourquoi, et considérant bien sûr tout cela, nous nous voyons très, en tout cas, alignés à la position de l'Islande, qu'on trouve une position véritablement, en tout cas, pertinente. Donc, il faut essayer effectivement de revoir cette approche famille. Et par ailleurs, si éventuellement on doit en tout cas arriver au vote, nous souhaiterions également que ce soit un vote à bulletin secret pour en tout cas garantir à tous ceux qui vont voter une quiétude et une indépendance dans la décision qu'ils vont prendre. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Mauritania. I now give the floor to Antigua and Barbuda, followed by Canada, followed by Australia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, Antigua and Barbuda would like to congratulate the proponents of Proposal 37 and for bringing to the attention of CITES the critical importance to look at the impact of trade on the management of these species. However, Mr. Chair, we are very concerned about the inconclusive scientific information that is being used in support of this proposal. It is quite evident in the divergence of views between the CITES, between the proponents, the CITES Secretariat, and the FAO expert panel. This is even more pronounced with regards to the linking of all species in the family and imposing trade sanctions on a number of lookalike species if this proposal is to go through. While we continue to commend and give support to the work of CITES in protecting many vulnerable plant and animal species, we are very concerned from a developing country standpoint of the way in which this convention is fostering an enabling environment that seems to be aimed at disenfranchising many marginal communities and communities of developing countries, especially communities of developing countries. The continued linking of species, which can be regarded as species profiling, is having a disastrous effect in the fishing industries of many coastal states. What it has indeed done, Mr. Chair, is to provide an environment that has criminalized the fishing industry. While fisheries management organization is striving to put management plans in place that aim at providing sustainable livelihoods, food security, and survival in a sustainable way of many marine-related species, it seems as if the role of this organization is turning into a role in which it is preventing coastal communities from realizing the goals of the United Nations Sustainable Program, which stress that no communities or no man should be left behind. Why are we accepting that a concern for one species should punish the ability of coastal communities to exploit other robust species? That cannot be right. And we are noticing from a developing country standpoint that we are only threatening the livelihoods of developing countries and coastal communities. When is the last time a species like the Patagonian toothfish, that is so important to some of us that are putting this proposal on the table, when is the last time we have heard anyone bring in any one of these threatened species to be placed on Appendix 1 or 2, threatening the livelihood and trade of large industries? It is always the marginal people that take the brunt of the impact that CITES decisions are making. We need to evaluate this. Another question that has to come into point, Mr. Chair. We have had over 25 years at minimum of CITES. And we CITES continue to make decisions on species as we're doing now on the proposal 37. But yet and for all, every COP we come here, we're hearing that species survival is getting more and more critical.
So I'm sorry to interrupt you, Antigua and Barbuda. You've been speaking for over 5 minutes now. We've got a long list still to go.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to close off now.
Okay.
What Antigua and Barbuda is proposing is that for marine-related species that are so important to sustainable livelihoods, we listen to FAO and we take into consideration the recommendations of FAO before we make decisions here on these very important species for developing countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Antigua and Barbuda. You have got your point across, I think. And now give the floor to Canada, followed by Australia, followed by the United States.
Thank you, Chair. Canada supports the conservation and sustainable management of all shark species, and Canada does appreciate the spirit of the original proposal. Consistent with various assessments of this proposal, Canada is concerned that only some of the species proposed for listing meet the biological and trade criteria for listing on Appendix 2. Although there do appear to be issues in identifying fins of some species, the use of the look-alike provision for listing the remaining species is not as well justified in the proposal. Canada would support the proposal with the amendment provided by Japan to reduce the scope to list only the 19 species the proposal states meets the Appendix 2 listing criteria, and to remove the 35 look-alike species. We thank the proponents for highlighting issues facing certain species of requiem sharks. Canada is committed to the conservation and sustainable management of sharks and to addressing global issues that work against these objectives. We are proud of the steps Canada has taken through trade measures to address harmful practices such as shark finning, and the role we play internationally in supporting the sustainable management of global fish stocks, including sharks. We are confident that our continued efforts to support the conservation and sustainable management of global shark populations will complement the outcomes of CoP19. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. I give the floor to Australia, followed by the United States, followed by Bahamas.
Thank you, Chair. Australia believes CITES has a lead role to play in regulating trade for marine species where survival is likely to be threatened by trade. Australia supports the proposed Appendix 2 listing for the family Carcharinidae on the basis that the 19 species identified in the proposal require regulation in international trade in order to ensure their survival in the wild. We are also persuaded that the remaining species in the family, in the form in which they are traded, look sufficiently alike to warrant inclusion in the family in Appendix 2. We are convinced that implementation will be more difficult if the lookalike species are not included in the listing. Australia does not support a reduction in the scope of the species included. Australia and some of the small island states in our region appreciate the proponent's decision to provide a 12-month delayed implementation. This will allow parties in our region to properly develop non-detriment findings and to implement these listings properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Australia. I now give the floor to the United States, followed by the Bahamas, followed by Somalia. So, United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. With your indulgence, the United States would like to speak briefly to a couple of the amendments and then briefly again after the amendments are decided. Would you grant that small request? Thank you. The United States believes that the proposed amendment by Japan is overly broad. However, we would support the proposed amendment by Peru with respect to Priones glauca. Thank you.
I think United States, I maybe misheard you, but you said you wanted to comment on the amendments after they've been accepted. I'd quite like to hear your comments on the amendments now so that the other parties can hear them, and there's still a large number of parties wanting the floor, so it would help us to do it now, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Those were our very brief comments on the amendments, and we would like to speak to the proposal as amended or underlying, however the case may be, once we get those adjudicated. Thank you.
Just reiterate, we support Peru.
Okay. Thank you, United States. I move on to Bahamas, followed by Somalia, followed by Niger. And again, I request people to be brief. If other people have made your comments already, just say I support the intervention by country X or country Y. That would help us enormously, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The Commonwealth of the Bahamas is a shark sanctuary, but beyond this fact, the Bahamas is a range state for at least 2 of the requiem shark species in Proposal 37. Chair, we are expanding our marine protected areas across our archipelagic nation to further protect and conserve wild fauna and flora. This includes the marine protected areas. Based on our assessments, as well as the proposed Appendix 2 listing to protect the species while continuing trade in a sustainable and regulated manner, as outlined in Proposal 37, and the proposed amendment by Panama for a 12-month delay period, Chair, the Commonwealth of the Bahamas is in support of this document being adopted with the proposed amendment by Panama. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Bahamas. I now give the floor to Somalia, followed by Niger, then South Africa.
Thanks, Chair, to give me the floor. Somalia is a shark range state country. We support the proposal to be enlisted in Annex 2. We have a concern the illegal trade of international sea of shark will lead the shark species for extinction. For that reason, we wish to support strongly to be enlisted in Annex 2. Shark had meet the criteria, and we request the international will to support the proposal of 37. I will thank Panama their efforts for the issue to enable effective implementation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Somalia, I give the floor to Niger, followed by South Africa, followed by Nigeria. Niger.
Merci bien, Monsieur le Président. Je serai bref. Il faut dire que cette famille de requins est fortement exploitée et commercialisée à l'échelle internationale. Et pourtant, aucune réglementation internationale n'est prévue pour assurer la durabilité ou la légalité de ce commerce. Nous soutenons l'inscription de cette famille à l'annexe 2 afin que ce commerce puisse être surveillé pour des raisons de similarité. Et nous rejetons en tout cas les propositions du Japon et de la Pérou. Merci bien, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Niger. I now give the floor to South Africa.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding this proposal, we would like to register our caution and concern. We feel it is far too broad in that it includes many species, from those that are very vulnerable to those that are very abundant. While several species within this group are of conservation concern and meet the listing criteria, others do not. Noting that some of these shark species are important fisheries for us, please heed us when we say that we do not have the resources to implement the provisions for an Appendix 2 listing for all these species. Effective CITES controls will be difficult to achieve, and the listing will place an unnecessary administrative burden on our management authorities. If limited resources are not focused where they matter most, conservation of other much more vulnerable species will be compromised. Listing all of the requiem sharks is also likely to have severe socio-economic impacts on many fisheries where these sharks sustain the livelihoods of local fishers. It is difficult to see how the listing will have a positive conservation outcome, and there is a high risk of an illegal trade emerging. The lack of comprehensive stock assessments for blue sharks in the southern Indian Ocean or the southern Atlantic Ocean to confirm that these stocks are overfished is of particular concern to South Africa. Standardized catch per unit effort from South Africa does not suggest that the stock is under threat to such a degree that listing under CITES Appendix is necessary. Furthermore, the assertion that this group should be listed due to the difficulty in identifying shark fins is unfounded. Fin identification guides are widely available, and South Africa has furthermore collaborated with WWF and Traffic to develop 3D printed shark fins. Several sets of these have already been printed locally and are used in training of customs, enforcement, and compliance officers. It is also our contention that a national plan of action for sharks is a far superior instrument for shark conservation. Through implementation of management interventions in our national plan of action, released in 2013, catches of sharks, rays, and chimeras have been significantly reduced to 55% of the 2016 estimate. The most effective reduction of 85% in just 4 years occurred in the large pelagic longline fishery that is for blue and mako sharks. Our second national plan of action for sharks was released in June 2022 and is shared as information document 91. South Africa commits to further reducing catches of threatened sharks through the implementation of this plan, and we are very pleased to report that analyses completed by our fisheries colleagues just yesterday show that between 2020 and 2021, landings of mako sharks and blue sharks have decreased significantly by 75 tons and 33 tons respectively, and only 7 tons of blue sharks were recorded to have been landed. In closing, South Africa would like to indicate our support for Japan's proposal to reduce the scope of the proposed listing. And lastly, we would like to strongly echo the concerns expressed by Antigua and Barbuda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, South Africa. I now give the floor to Nigeria, Mali, and then Liberia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to join my fellow parties who have supported the listing of all requiem sharks in Appendix 2. With this, it will reduce the pressure, on this species of sharks, and therefore want to thank the Panama government for bringing up this proposal, and therefore I support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigeria, and thank you for your brevity. I give the floor to Mali, then Liberia, then Lao People's Democratic Republic.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Président, et merci de m'avoir donné la parole, puisqu'il s'agit de diversité, de biodiversité, de préservation de la biodiversité. Et vu l'intérêt suscité par les uns et les autres autour du débat, le Mali souscrit à l'intervention des prédécesseurs et soutient la proposition du Panama.
Thank you, Mali. I give the floor to Liberia, then Lao People's Democratic Republic.
Thank you, Chair. Liberia would like to support Panama and the other countries that are leading the proposal. And Liberia inhabit the Caribbean sharks in our various territorial waters. In the past, that have been traded of the endangered species are practically indistinguishable from those of others. Highly endangered species in the family name. The effect of this proposal would be to help ensure that international commercial trade in these species will be transparent, legal, and not detrimental to wild populations. Therefore, we support the proposal submitted by Panama and reject the amendment proposed from Japan. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Liberia. I give the floor to Lao People's Democratic Republic. I have more parties on the list, but I'll come back to that in a moment. So, Lao, you have the floor.
It is my first time that Lao PDR takes the floor. We would like to congratulate the chair for the Committee 1 to have excellent supervision to the meeting yesterday and today. We also would like to thank to the CITES Secretariat and the Government of Panama to invite us to this meeting and provide us with some excellent hospitality facilities and support. LAUPDR is of the view to respect the results of the scientific research. If Japan has enough scientific results from the research on the shark as proposed, not all species of look-alike sharks should be uplisted. However, some specific species should be carefully considered to include. So LAUPDR consider to support Japan's proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Lau PDR. I still have 8 parties on the list, but all 8 parties are co-proponents, and I think we're already well past 3:30, and we're still on our first proposal. I know it's a subject of great interest to you. I will come back to the co-proponents towards the end, but with your indulgence, I would rather not give you all the floor because it's adding time, and I presume you're all going to be in favor of your own proposal. So I do want to see if there's any key observers that might want to make an intervention. So if you leave those parties on the list, if there are any observers, that I will see if we might take 1 or possibly 2. But time is limited, and we do have to try and resolve this proposal, and it's got several amendments that we need to work out the correct order in which to take them. So observers, you can press your buttons if you wish. A point of order there? Who's... I don't... So I can't see your flag, and you're waving it, but are you trying to make a point of order? Because it's only delegates that can make points of order. Do you have a problem with your microphone? If so, no? Okay, everything's sorted. Right, I will take a couple of interventions, but well, I'll begin by inviting FAO to make an intervention.
Thank you, Chair. The FAO expert panel's assessment was that the family Cacciaranidae do not meet the CITES criteria for listing in Appendix 2 as a single proposal, stating the 3 species met the criteria, 12 species do not, and 4 species had insufficient data to make a determination. In its report, the expert panel highlighted 3 fundamental issues of effectively a collation of 19 sub-proposals. First, for 9 species, the key listing criteria on which the Convention relies, affected by trade, was not evidenced. Second, species and genera of the family Cacciaranidae have a range of distinctively different sizes, morphological appearance, and productivity. This means many can be readily differentiated from each other, both at landing sites and in trade. Third, owing to the diversity of biological distributional habitat and fisheries and trade characteristics of these species, their management is not simple to examine as a single group, and the broad range of international, regional, and national policy in practice takes account of the needs and capacities of local actors. In regards to trade, the expert panel noted that domestic consumption and national trade were primary reasons for fisheries retaining and landing many of the species proposed, with the component of their fin being less than 1% of the global fin market. Many species are small, abundant, and productive, such as species of the sharp-nosed and spade-nosed genera, that are easily distinguished from other family members of the Cacciaranidae at landing or by the small but recognizable fin shape in markets. Blue shark, the most prevalent species in the shark fin trade, and not classified as threatened, are identified at landing sites because of their body color and appearance, while traders attest to their fins having differential qualities. The likelihood of an Appendix 2 listing achieving a good conservation outcome in the case this listing proposal is adopted will largely depend on the species' primary use and the ability for parties to implement CITES provisions. In many cases, fisheries information for the 19 species across its range states was basic, potentially limiting the ability for authorities to make positive NDFs. If Proposal 37 is adopted and positive MDFs are forthcoming, new information from legal trade would likely reach the CITES trade database to help build a record of this trade. Otherwise, legal trade might be delayed, NDFs may be inadequate, and there may be an increase in illegal trade. The expert panel noticed the listing of 35 proposed species under lookalike provisions would have substantial socioeconomic, surveillance, enforcement, and prosecution implications. This also adds many new species and requirements onto existing monitoring capacity, including the need for sampling and shipping permits for ongoing study. The summary establishing the new set of international trade controls, in summary, establishing a new set of international trade controls on a broad range of species where many don't meet the CITES criteria and where export values were found to be a limited driver of exploitation could lead to a large investment of effort for limited returns with regard to ensuring survival of those species. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, FAO. I will take 3 more interventions. If people will keep them very short, I'll give the floor to IUCN, then Humane Society International, then International Coalition of Fisheries. So those 3 interventions only. I know there are a lot more requests for the floor, but we've already spent a long time on this proposal. Again, a request, please be very, very brief. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is an IUCN traffic joint intervention. The IUCN traffic analysis concluded that 18 of the 19 lead Carcharonidae species meet the criteria for inclusion in Appendix 2, with scientific data supporting that most have undergone significant abundance declines that meet criteria Annex 2AA. The highly credible nature of the underpinning red list assessments is highlighted in InfDoc 87. The remainder of proposed species either have evidence of ongoing declines and presence of fins and meat in international trade meeting Annex 2AB, or they are lookalikes meeting criteria 2BA. Of the species proposed as lookalikes, 18 meet the criteria Annex 2B due to the difficulty of distinguishing between the primary fins of species already listed or at least one of the species that meet criteria Annex 2A in this proposal. But many also meet the criteria Annex 2AB in their own right. Meat products of the family in trade cannot be identified to the species level by visual inspection, supporting the need to include all members of the family. We encourage parties not to remove species from the current proposal, as this would open a loophole where listed species could be traded and claimed to be the non-listed member of the family. This is particularly true for considerations to remove the blue shark from this proposal, where meat and the lower caudal lobe, one of the primary fins traded, cannot be visually distinguished from other traded fins from all other species of Carcharonidae. Traffic and IUCN consider all species in the family Carcharonidae meet the relevant criteria for inclusion on CITES Appendix 2. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, IUCN. I think I said Humane Society International, then the International Coalition of Fisheries, and then that's the list closed for observers. You have the floor. Again, please be brief.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to speak in support of Proposal 37 on behalf of over 40 signatory NGOs, a complete list of which will be provided to the Secretariat. Adding the remaining unlisted requiem sharks to Appendix 2 has the potential to turn the tide for some of the world's most threatened shark species. CITES safeguards are our best tools for ending unsustainable international trade, and yet currently only apply to a quarter of the species in the global shark fin trade. This inadequate coverage leaves many requiem shark populations at serious risk for continued decline and extinction. We note that requiem shark species such as reef sharks and bull sharks are a significant attraction for dive tourism, generating hundreds of millions of dollars and supporting hundreds of thousands of jobs in associated industries. Healthy populations of requiem sharks can facilitate the post-pandemic rebuilding of coastal economies as countries become increasingly accessible to tourism. Non-governmental organizations, including many in this room, are deeply invested in continuing to partner with governments to help facilitate implementation of the shark listings and meet associated challenges. Sharks are the linchpins of our ocean ecosystems. Unregulated international trade is a major threat to their survival, and we are running out of time. We urge parties to support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, HSI. I now give the floor to the International Coalition of Fisheries, but you've disappeared. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, Chairman. I represent the International Coalition of Fisheries Associations, which represents the fishing industry from 25 different countries from 5 different continents. Our companies contribute to feed the world sustainably and to create employment and wealth all over the world. Please remember that we have been declared an essential and strategic sector during COVID. ICFA promotes sustainable fishing of sharks based on the best available science and taking into account the 3 pillars of sustainability: environment, social, and economic pillars. We consider RFMOs as the appropriate bodies to manage the shark stocks and respect the role of FAO as coordinator of the expert advisory panel, considering it as the only independent UN body with expertise on fisheries. So for that reason, we think that parties of CITES should take into account FAO expert panel conclusions when taking their decisions. We have listened to all the statements and consider that the best way to try find consensus among the delegations is to support the Japanese proposal that was also supported by Indonesia, Canada, Antigua and Barbuda, Niger, South Africa, Laos, and among other countries. We are especially concerned about the possible inclusion of blue shark, applying the lookalike criteria. We are really surprised with the proposal because blue shark is easily distinguishable, even when the fins are separated from the body due to its characteristic metallic blue coloration. It is a shark species sustainably managed, with healthy abundance in all oceans, and according to the scientific committees of the RFMOs, not overfished and overfishing is not occurring. So the status of a blue shark is not endangered by fishing or trade. In this sense, I think it is very relevant, for instance, that the arguments presented by IATTC scientific staff on this issue in this meeting, concluding that it sees little scientific support to the inclusion of blue shark. Please be aware of the serious management difficulties that this proposal may create to CITES national authorities due to the fact that we are talking about the shark species most subject to international trade. Huge and unnecessary administrative burdens will be created for administrations and for fishermen, and it will have important socioeconomic and environmental implications for all fishing nations, not only for developing countries, but also for developed countries. Think about the possible risk of increasing illegal fishing and trading. For all these reasons, I invite all of you to support Japanese compromise proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, International Coalition of Fisheries. I do have a request now from the nomenclature specialist of the Animals Committee, so I will give the floor to him, and he can hopefully give us a brief comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is in response to the amendment proposed by Japan and supported by others. As amended by you in conversation, it would be family Carcarainidae excluding certain genera. However, several of the species listed in the first paragraph of the original proposal are actually members of those genera. Therefore, excluding those genera would exclude the species individually proposed for inclusion in the first paragraph. The appropriate way to handle the intent of Japan's amendment would, in my opinion, be to simply strike the second paragraph of a proposal in the original proposal 37. Thank you, Chair.
Niger, is there a problem of some point? I'll give you the floor, but please, we're just trying to consult and consider the best way forward. But is there a particular issue that you wanted to raise or a point of order?
Oui, merci bien, Monsieur le Président. Effectivement, il s'agit d'une précision que nous souhaiterons apporter. Nous aurons cru entendre dans l'intervention de l'association, du délégué de l'association des pêcheurs, que le Niger, dans son intervention sur cette proposition, appuie la position du Japon, alors que telle n'a pas été notre position dans notre intervention. Nous avons bel et bien été clairs que nous rejetons la proposition du Japon et du Pérou. Merci bien, Monsieur le Président.
Okay, thank you, Niger. That's noted. And just give us a bit of a moment here on the top table to work out the different implications of the various amendments. Thank you. Right, thank you for your patience. I know some of the co-proponents are still waiting for the floor. You know, with respect, unless you absolutely need to say something that's going to add to the debate, we've been talking about this proposal now for nearly 2 hours. I think we know the pros and cons and as seen from different perspectives. I'm conscious also that some of the observers have, felt excluded from this debate. I was limited in time, so I just tried to pick some that may maybe represent a spectrum of views. I apologize if I wasn't able to call you. I will try to give you the opportunity in future debates. But, I really want to bring this debate to a conclusion. So more parties are asking for the floor, really, and I think at this stage, I really don't have the time. We have to make progress with this agenda. We've still on one proposal for this entire afternoon session, and we have a lot more to do in the time available to us. So I'm going to ask parties, potentially to, desist from requesting the floor now, unless there is something absolutely critical. But if it's just to make a statement in support of what the proposal or an amendment, then, really, I think we're at a stage where the only way to resolve the different amendments is to vote on them through Rule 25.5. So if you could press your buttons and remove yourself from the list. And I see you are being persistent. And no observers. I'm very sorry. I'm not taking any more interventions from observers. You have my deepest apologies, but we do have to bring this to a conclusion. And I closed the list for parties quite a long time ago. So I have 3 parties that are still pressing, asking for the floor. 2. So, Syrian Arab Republic, you are a co-proponent, and I think the arguments for the proposal have been made. China, do you have something absolutely essential that you need to say? You can have a very short, very, very short intervention if so.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. China would like to propose a way forward. We are in support of the current proposal has to be amended to reduce the scope of the species listing. However, in view of the diversified comments on the requiem shark listing from the discussion of the issue, China suggests establishing an in-session working group, including proponents and range states and other interested parties, to discuss the species listing so as to maximize support from parties. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, China. I think given the range of views here, I don't think that is a productive way forward, and I think we need to make some decisions. Syrian Arab Republic, you still got your button pressed. I will give you the floor for a very, very brief intervention if it's adding something to the debate, but if it's just to support, then I'll interrupt you, I'm afraid, with apologies.
Thank you, Chair. The government of Syria would like to thank Panama of this important and necessary proposal to list 2 requiem shark family in Appendix 2 of CITES While some may say this is a very large proposal, we disagree. 35% of species in this family are endangered and critically endangered.
Syrian Arab Republic, with apologies.
We fully support the inclusion of all species within the family, and because the future of shark for fisheries, for livelihood, for our seas and ocean hills depend on it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Syrian Arab Republic. Okay, so we have a number of amendments in front of us. There is the proposal by Japan, which they read into the record earlier, which would exclude several genera. We've heard from the nomenclature committee, the nomenclature specialist of the Animals Committee, that this amendment would remove some of the species that were the 19, I think, that were the focus of the proposal. So it does not just affect lookalikes, it affects some of the other species as well. So you, as parties, need to be aware of that. The second amendment, which I think was made by Peru, was for the proposal as it stands, but excluding Prianaceae glauca, the blue shark. And in addition, we have a proposal for a 24-month delay, which, as I recall, came from Chile. The proposal already has a 12-month delay, which has been built in by the, which has been amended by all the proponents. So to work through these and to follow Rule 25.5, I intend to put these to a vote. Now, we've already had a request. So, Panama, you want to make a point of order?
I want to reiterate, lo voy a decir en español. Voy a reiterar que establecimos 12 meses y quisiera volver a preguntarle a Chile si quiere poner a votación los 24 meses, ya que para estar seguros que no escuchó el tema de los 12 meses. Entonces quisiera darle la palabra a Chile para preguntarle si quiere ir a votación para esos 24 meses o si retira la enmienda.
Chile, I saw you appear on the screen. You can clarify if you still want this amendment to be taken forward. So you have the floor.
Buenas tardes, señor presidente. Retiramos la enmienda y vamos por 12 meses.
Thank you, Chile, for your cooperation. So we have two amendments, and the one that will have the least restrictive effect on trade, or which amends the scope of the proposal most, is the one by Japan, which they read into the record earlier. So I intend to take that first. I see a request from the floor from Canada.
My apologies, Chair. I understand that you are putting the Japanese amendment to vote. What is unclear, based on your commentary to Canada, for which we would seek clarification, is the amendment that we are voting on. Canada's understanding of what Japan presented was to essentially remove the 35 look-alike species and retain the 19 species that the proponents indicated met the first criteria. I would really appreciate clarity if Canada understood that amendment correctly. Thank you.
So thank you, Canada. And, I think reading or listening to Japan's intervention, their intention was to remove the 35 so-called lookalike. But the text they gave us doesn't do that. It is much broader. It says exclusion of the following genus and species, and then lists several genus names. So that is regardless of intent, that's the kind of wording that I have in front of me and I understand. So on that basis, that is what I am going to ask this committee to decide on.
They got it right.
So just for and just to clarify this, on Japan you have requested the floor. Thank you, because we would come to you because it would be helpful, to clarify your exact meaning and so that we know exactly what we're voting on here and the committee knows exactly what they're voting on. So Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we tried to make a same question as Canada, and our real intention is to remove the 35 lookalike species, and do not intend to intend to remove some of the 19 species. So, based on the advice from the specialist of the nomenclature of the Animal Committee, we agree that the second paragraph of the the second sentence of the first paragraph be removed. And also, if we will go on a vote, Japan asks for the secret ballot for all of the proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Japan. So our understanding now is that you are proposing an amendment to the proposal. You're clarifying your amendment so that it reads the first paragraph of the proposal, which begins inclusion of the grey reef shark, Carcharinus amblyrhynchus, etc. That those are the only species listed, and that the second paragraph referring to lookalikes is not part of the proposal. Is that correct? Yes. Yes, I see you nodding. Thank you. So I think we can take that as the amendment, if that is clear to parties. It's obviously in proposal 37. And I've also heard, a number of requests for secret ballots on all the votes. So I will go and go through the procedure for secret ballots in a minute. I have one, I hope, final request from the floor from China. So China, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, China wishes to repeat our request. According to the Rule 7 of the Rules of Procedure of the Conference of Parties, we think establishing a working group could be a possible way to, could be a possible solution to this issue. Thank you.
Panama, you have an additional point.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Like I said, como dije en mis palabras, los coproponentes no estamos de acuerdo con un working group. Hemos discutido esta propuesta extensamente por más de 2 horas y 10 minutos, por lo cual el working group probablemente sean todas las partes que hablaron y no va a ser funcional. Adicionalmente, quiero estar segura de que la primera propuesta que se va a votar, cuál es esa propuesta y si es la enmienda establecida por Japón, recomendamos el no y le avisamos a nuestros proponentes que voten el no. Necesitamos estar seguros cuál va a ser la primera votación.
Thank you, Panama. Yes. We take your point, you're not in favour of a working group, and that's my conclusion too. As you say, we've been discussing this for over 2 hours. I don't think a working group would necessarily come out with any better way forward. So there have been requests for secret ballots for all votes we have, and it may be that we only have 1 or 2. But to be clear, to follow that under the rules of procedure, I need that to be, those proposals to be seconded by at least 10 parties. So if any parties are in favour of secret ballots, I ask them to press their buttons now. Right, colleagues, so there are a large number of seconders for secret ballot, and so we will conduct the votes, any votes we make as a secret ballot. So the issue we're now voting on is the amendment by Japan. We're doing it under Rule 25.5, which allows any representative to make an amendment to a proposal. There hasn't been any consensus, so we're putting this amendment to a vote. And if this proposed amendment is accepted, the amended proposal shall supersede the original proposal for the amendment of the appendices. If the amended proposal is accepted, we then have to have a second vote, as explained to us by the chair of the Standing Committee, on the substance of the proposal. If the proposed amendment is not accepted, then I'll move on to the next amendment, which is the amendment to, for the listing without Prion glauca. So that is a question that we're going to vote on. I'm now starting the voting procedure. So I've explained that this is a vote for the Japanese amendment, which we'd clarified a few minutes ago. This vote is by secret ballot. The vote of the European Union will be cast by the delegation of the EU. It is a substantive matter, so it's a 2/3 majority. If you vote yes, you're voting in favour of the amendment proposed by Japan. If you vote no, you're voting against it. So I'm just going to check with the technicians that everything is set up, and also I ask you all to be seated and remind you of the rules about photography. I think we're just clearing the front part of the room. And technicians, can we have the thumbs up? Are we? Okay. So the room seems to be clear now. So parties, you have 40 seconds to cast your vote. And the ballot is open now. Thank you, technicians. If you display the results on the screen, please. Clearly, this proposed amendment didn't meet a two-thirds majority, so it is rejected. I think we can clear, it's a secret ballot, so clearly you don't get to see party votes. So I think as long as you've captured the results, we can clear the screen and move on to our next amendment, which is to the amendment proposed by Peru, I think, which was for the proposal to go forward as it is with the European Union. You have a point of order under the United States. Okay. EU, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to ask for the opportunity to give an explanation of vote. This is one thing. The other thing is that we would like to express our deep regret that this ballot has gone in secret. And the third thing is that I would like to request that those parties supporting the secret vote are made public, because according to the rules of procedure, there needs to be at least 10 parties supporting. There are 2 or 3 that have requested the secret vote, but we don't know who else had requested the secret vote. And then also we wonder whether the request for secret vote has to be taken in each of the votes. So sorry for being a bit extensive, but these are the questions that we would like to raise, and also to explain that the European Union and its member states have voted against this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. I will come back to your points in a moment. I've just got 3 other requests for the floor now. The United States, then Senegal, then Antigua and Barbuda.
Thank you, Chair. We agree with the European Union that the parties requesting the secret ballot should identify themselves, and we would also just like to state for the record that the United States voted no on that amendment.
Thank you, United States. I'll come back in a minute. Senegal, then Antigua and Barbuda.
Voilà, merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Nous abondons dans le même sens que les États-Unis et les UK, donc et l'Union européenne, dis-moi, autant pour moi, donc qu'on affiche nos votes. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Noted. And Antigua and Barbuda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I totally disagree with the request of the European Union and the United States of America regarding the identification of those who voted via the secret ballot. You cannot penalize countries because the deliberations U.S. chair did not indicate that there is a requirement for 10 votes. So how can we be penalized because of the mistake of the chair? Antigua and Barbuda voted in favor, voted yes. I have nothing to hide on that. Everybody should know that. But those countries that were given the rights under this convention to vote secretly just cannot be penalized because the chair did not indicate that they need 10 votes.
Thank you. We'll come back in a second. One moment. Thank you, colleagues, for your patience. We're just getting details of the precise number, because once the list disappeared, we didn't have a record up here on the front desk. There were 27 requests for seconders for a secret ballot, so well over the 10 requested. And clearly a number of parties have asked to see who was seconding a secret ballot. Now, in my experience, that's never happened before in CITES conferences of the parties. I don't think the rules are necessarily clear on the issue, and I think possibly the best way forward is to raise this in the Bureau to get their advice on what the correct practice should be. So for today, I think I would prefer to continue with our established practice, but raise it in the Bureau tomorrow morning so that, or earlier if needed, so that we have a way forward in future. And we did have requests for a secret ballot on every vote, but in order to make the issue more transparent, or to make it more, just to be certain that we have the same numbers of seconders, that we will assume there's already been requests for secret ballots on every vote, but when we get to discussing the next amendment proposal that came originally from Peru, then I will also seek seconders for that secret ballot as well. Antigua and Panama, then Antigua and Barbuda.
Gracias, presidente. Solo queremos aclarar también que la próxima votación es la enmienda establecida por Perú y no la propuesta original. Además, volver a recalcar que no solamente son las aletas, sino también la carne, y es prácticamente imposible de identificar, además de que los tiburones juveniles tampoco se pueden identificar.
I will clarify what the next vote is on. It's by the amendment. It is on the amendment by Peru to exempt Prianaceae glauca from the listing. Antigua and Barbuda, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on two matters. I would assume that while we are locked into voting, no member state can continue to advocate on either side of the issue. So I would urge, Mr. Chair, that you ask member states to refrain from doing that. That's one, Mr. Chair. When we reach the stage of getting support for the secret ballot by the 10 that is required, I should hope that that would not be disclosed either, because the practice at CITES is to also keep that secret. And I don't think that we should change course now, especially when it has to be discussed by the Bureau tomorrow morning.
Thank you, Antigua and Barbuda, and for the reminder that when we're discussing issues here, we shouldn't be talking to the substance of the proposals. You are correct there, and I should have picked up on that. I also said that for the time being, for this session, we will continue with the established practice of not sharing the list of parties who have seconded a secret ballot, but that we will raise it in the Bureau and seek the advice of the Bureau on the way forward. So we're not intending to do that now. So does that satisfy your concerns? Yes? Okay. Right, so we will now move on to a vote on the Second Amendment. I've already heard requests for any vote to be a secret ballot, but to be sure that that is still the wish of the parties here, I will ask that if you are seconding the the motion for a secret ballot that you press your buttons. Just can I clarify, make sure countries that have already made the request, you don't press your button because we're looking for seconders. So if you were one of the parties, I think I recall 3, then you shouldn't really be seconding, in my opinion. But anyway, I ask for those parties who want to second a secret ballot on our next amendment to press the buttons now. So that's 17 parties seconding a secret ballot. So we can clear the list now. We will now begin the voting procedure. So this is a vote for the amendment proposed by Peru to amend the proposal so that it excludes Prionaceae glauca, the blue shark. This is a secret ballot. The vote of the European Union will be cast by the delegation of the EU. It is a substantive matter so that it will be decided by a 2/3 majority. I just check with the technicians that everything is in order. And parties, please take your seats and remain seated. Do we have the okay from the technicians?
We're prepared, Chairman.
Thank you. So, parties, you have 40 seconds to cast your vote. Yes is in favor of the amendment, no is against it. So, the ballot is open now. Thank you. Technicians, could you display the results on the screen? And clearly this amendment is not accepted and fails to achieve the 2/3 majority. United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States would like the record to reflect that it voted yes on the amendment and would like to make a brief statement as requested earlier on the underlying proposal. The United States understands the critical role that sharks play in marine ecosystems, as well as the dire state of many shark populations that have been depleted by overfishing, which can be driven by the international shark fin trade. We appreciate the intent of this proposal and have supported past efforts to use CITES to help regulate international trade in sharks and shark products where appropriate. We agree that a species fin showing up even in small percentages in sampling from international trade hubs is cause for concern. We had hoped that consideration of this proposal would not be rushed and that we would have time this week to discuss further with the proponents and other interested parties outside of the formal committee setting the merits of this proposal. That did not happen. However, our concern for sharks and for ocean ecosystems globally outweighs those considerations, and the United States supports adoption of the proposal. Thank you.
European Union, and we note the comments of the United States. Thank you. EU.
Thank you, Chair. Very briefly, on behalf of the European Union and its member states, I would like to inform that we have voted against the amendment, and we deeply regret that this ballot has been cast in secret. We believe transparency is important in the functioning of the Convention. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, European Union, and we have noted. So we are now going to vote on the original proposal as amended by the proponents. So this is the original proposal with the entry into effect of the inclusion in Appendix 2 being delayed by 12 months. Again, we've had requests for all the votes to be by secret ballot, and in the interests of making sure we're following the right procedure, will parties who wish to second a secret ballot please press their microphone buttons now. Thank you. We have 20 parties seconding a secret ballot. So you can now unpress your buttons. We will move on to a vote on this issue. This is a vote, of course, on the proposal as amended. I just read out the text of the amendment. This is a secret ballot. The vote of the European Union will be cast by the delegation of the EU. It is a substantive matter, so it's decided by a two-thirds majority. And with that, I just need to make sure the technicians are ready and that we don't have people wandering around in the area. Please take your seats and remain there until the vote is over. Please be seated. We have Secretariat staff going around trying to keep people in their place. So technicians, are we ready now?
We're ready, Chair.
Thank you. So parties, again, you have 40 seconds to cast your vote. The ballot is open now. Thank you, technicians. If you could display the results on the screen. the proposal is adopted with over a 2/3 majority. But I would ask you again, please refrain from expressions of clapping or shouting. I think we've had a very long debate and there's a very wide range of views here. It's a secret ballot, of course, so we won't be displaying any names of parties or how they vote. So if you just give me a moment to get my papers in order, we will then move on to the next proposal. Sorry, I missed. There's some requests for the floor. So I see United States, then Kenya, then Jordan. So United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States would like the record to reflect that we voted yes on the proposal. We would also like to note that we believe parties requesting a secret ballot should be disclosed. Thank you.
Thank you, United States, and your request is, or your comment is noted. I think I originally said Kenya, then Jordan, followed by the European Union.
Chair, sorry, Kenya had mistakenly pressed the button to speak. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. I give now the floor to Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. I'm afraid that I have a problem in the device here. I faced a problem in voting, so I'm satisfied with the results, but I hope this problem to be solved. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. We'll get technicians or whatever to attend to that. Next on my list was European Union, then Antigua and Barbuda.
Thank you, Chair. Just to record, our vote in this proposal was positive, so we supported the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. European Union, that's noted. Antigua and Barbuda, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Antigua and Barbuda would like to disclose that we voted no on this proposal in keeping with recommendations of the CARICOM Fisheries Management Mechanism that did not support this proposal in the first place.
Thank you, Antigua and Barbuda, and that is noted also. So, as I said, I'll just get my papers in order and then we will introduce the next proposal. Thank you for your patience, colleagues. We now move on to Proposal 38 on Svernidae, hammerhead sharks. The proponents are Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, European Union, and Panama. So I invite one of you to introduce this proposal. And I see the European Union requesting the floor. So you have the floor. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je parle ici au nom de l'UE et de ses États membres que je représente, et nous sommes heureux de vous présenter la proposition 38 d'inscription de toutes les espèces de la famille des Sphyrnidés qui ne sont pas déjà inscrites à l'annexe 2. Nous proposons l'inscription de Sphyrna tiburo, communément appelé requin-marteau tiburo, à l'annexe 2 de la CITES, conformément à l'annexe 2A de la résolution CONF 9.24 REV COP17. Sphyrna tiburo répond à ces critères d'inscription en raison des déclins importants de la population, documentés dans une grande partie de l'aire de répartition de l'espèce. La présence d'ailerons de Sphyrna tiburo dans les plaques tournantes du commerce international des ailerons de requins, combinée à la prévalence croissante sur le marché international du commerce des ailerons d'espèces de requins côtiers, signifie qu'une inscription à l'annexe 2 de la CITES est nécessaire pour garantir que toute croissance du commerce international de Sphyrna tiburo peut être gérée de manière durable et d'une manière qui permette à l'espèce de se remettre des déclins déjà documentés. En outre, et conformément à l'annexe 2B de la résolution CONF 9.24 REV COP17, nous proposons l'inscription de toutes les espèces restantes de la famille des Sphyrnidés à l'annexe 2 de la CITES. Lorsque les 3 grandes espèces de requins-marteaux, Sphyrna lewini, Sphyrna mokaran et Sphyrna zygaena, ont été inscrites à l'annexe 2 de la CITES à la COP 16, on pensait que seules ces 3 espèces de Sphyrnidés faisaient l'objet d'un commerce international en raison de leur taille supérieure. Cependant, depuis lors, il est devenu évident que des espèces de requins marteaux de plus petite taille ont également fait l'objet d'un commerce international. Compte tenu du problème de ressemblance avec les nageoires de toute la famille des requins marteaux, nous proposons l'inclusion des 5 espèces restantes de requins marteaux, en plus de Sphyrna tiburo. Nous tenons à souligner que l'évaluation de l'UICN, du secrétariat CITES et du groupe consultatif d'experts de la FAO a conclu une conformité aux critères d'inscription de la CITES et qu'il était approprié d'inscrire les requins marteaux au niveau de la famille à l'annexe 2. Nous invitons donc les parties à soutenir la proposition. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. European Union, I now open the floor for comments from parties. I see Senegal, followed by Canada, then Indonesia.
Voilà, merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Donc, nous remercions d'abord l'UE d'avoir fait cette proposition, donc pour d'inscrire cette famille de requins marteaux à la CITES. Donc, comme en guise de continuité par rapport à notre soutien à la proposition qui vient de passer, donc le Sénégal appuie fortement cette proposition de l'UE. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Senegal. I give the floor to Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Canada appreciates this comprehensive and well-thought-out proposal. Canada supports the analysis in the proposal that the bonnet-head shark meets the CITES criteria for listing on Appendix 2. There does appear to be issues in identifying fins between species and between some juveniles and adults of some hammerhead species. Since hammerhead species have a characteristic fin shape that distinguishes them from all other shark species, we appreciate the evidence presented to justify listing these species. Canada supports the proposal to include bonnethead shark in Appendix 2 and to include the 5 remaining species of hammerhead sharks in Appendix 2 as lookalike species, and reiterates its appreciation for the proponent's diligence in preparing the proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. I give the floor to Indonesia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Indonesia supports Proposal 38 to include all species in the family Sphyrnidae in Appendix 2 because it has met the uplisting criteria in Appendix 2, and Indonesia only has 4 species of hammerhead sharks, and 3 of them are already listed in CITES Appendix 2. Therefore, the inclusion of other hammerhead species in Appendix 2 will make it easier for us in terms of management. Thank you.
Thank you. Indonesia. I now give the floor to Monaco, followed by Peru, then Guatemala.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La Principauté de Monaco fait part également de son entier soutien à la proposition numéro 38 visant à l'inscription de tous les requins marteaux à l'annexe 2 de la CITES et remercie les co-auteurs pour cette proposition. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Monaco. I now open the floor for Peru, followed by Guatemala, followed by the United Kingdom.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Queremos agradecer a la Unión Europea por la presentación de la propuesta de incluir a la familia Sphyrnidae en el apéndice 2. Hemos realizado un análisis integral de la propuesta y consideramos que en este caso sí se cumplen con los criterios de la resolución 9.24, que ayudará a resolver los problemas de semejanza en todos los taxones de la familia. Aprovechamos la ocasión para recalcar la necesidad de fortalecer la generación de información, el desarrollo de estudios poblacionales a escala regional, que de esta forma ayudarán a facilitar la elaboración de los dictámenes de extracción no perjudicial de estas especies, además de reforzar las capacidades para la trazabilidad de los subproductos de estas especies. Gracias.
Thank you, Peru. I give the floor to Guatemala, followed by the United Kingdom, then New Zealand.
Gracias, señor presidente. Guatemala está consciente de la reducción de las poblaciones de tiburones martillo. Consideramos necesaria la inclusión de la familia Sphyrnidae en el apéndice 2 de la CITES, ya que cumple con los criterios establecidos por las CITES y por el criterio de similitud. Debido a que es difícil diferenciar las aletas entre una especie y otra. Guatemala está implementando el Plan de Acción Nacional para la Conservación de Condrictios, en el cual se están tomando acciones para el manejo de estas especies. Creemos que la inclusión de la familia en el apéndice 2 contribuirá sustancialmente a los esfuerzos por promover el uso sostenible y la conservación de los tiburones martillo. Por lo tanto, Guatemala apoya la aprobación de esta propuesta. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Guatemala. I give the floor to the United Kingdom, followed by New Zealand, then India.
Thank you, Chair. In the interest of time, I'll be very brief. The UK thanks the proponents for bringing forward this important listing proposal. The UK agrees that this proposal meets the Appendix Listing 2 criteria, and we are therefore fully supportive of it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, UK. And for your brevity, I give the floor to New Zealand, then India, then the Comoros.
Mr. Chair, New Zealand believes that Sphyrnidae tiburo does meet the criteria for listing on Appendix 2, and also notes that Animals Committee has noted in recent meetings that identification to species level of specimens of hammerhead and winghead sharks of the family Sphyrnidae in international trade poses a particular challenge to enforcement officers. New Zealand therefore considers that this proposal is timely and supports the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. I give the floor to India, followed by the Comoros.
Thank you, Chair. India supports the proposal to list hammerhead sharks on Appendix 2. We would like to emphasize that our support for the proposal is based on the declines that the species have suffered and not based on the lookalike criteria in paragraph 2B of Article 2 of the Convention. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. India. I mentioned the Comoros, but they disappeared from the list, so I'll then move on to Cuba, followed by Brazil, followed by the United States.
Gracias, señor presidente. En aras del tiempo, lo que queremos felicitar a los proponentes. Cuba apoya la propuesta. Le hemos revisado la información científica presentada en la propuesta, así como del panel de expertos de la FAO, y apoyamos la propuesta. Gracias.
Thank you. Cuba, we'll give the floor to Brazil, United States, then Chile.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving the floor. As co-sponsor of Proposal 38, we want to express our gratitude to the other proponents. Of the 7 species of hammerhead sharks that occur in our country, 3 are already listed in Appendix 2 of CITES and are classified as critically endangered. Besides that, other 3 species of the family are classified as critically endangered in our country. Data indicates that local populations are reduced to at least 80% of their original abundance, including regional extinctions and lack of recent records. In Brazil, the species are protected and therefore capture, transport, storage, custody, handling, processing, commercialization, among other measures, are forbidden. We understand that the inclusion of the Sphaeridae family in Appendix 2 of CITES will promote greater control of the international trade in illegal shark fishing, and in Brazil, it will reinforce measures to control the illegal trade in species considered endangered, and also will stimulate measures for ordering and conservation of these species. The proposal was evaluated by the Brazilian Scientific Authority, which confirms its technical and scientific robustness. We understand that the inclusion of the Sphaeridae family in Appendix 2 of CITES will promote greater control of international trade and also of illegal shark fishing, and in Brazil will reinforce our measures to control the illegal trade of the species. Brazil therefore invites the parties to this convention to support the adoption of Proposal 38. Thank you.
Thank you. Brazil, I give the floor to the United States, followed by Chile, then Australia.
Thank you, Chair. The United States supports the proposal to list these species in Appendix 2. Thank you.
Thank you, and for your brevity. So Chile, followed by Australia.
Gracias, señor presidente. Chile apoya esta propuesta y agradece a sus creadores.
Thank you. I'm hearing lots of support. Australia, you have the floor, followed by Sierra Leone and then Colombia.
Thank you, Chair. Australia believes that the lead species meets the criteria for CITES Appendix 2 listing. We're also persuaded that the remaining species in the family, in the form in which they are traded, look sufficiently alike to warrant inclusion of the remaining family on Appendix 2. Thank you.
Sierra Leone, then Colombia, then Japan. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Since this is the first time Sierra Leone is taking the floor at this committee, I'd like to extend our appreciation to the Panama government for the hospitality that has been given to us and other delegates at CoP19 of CITES. And I would also like to congratulate the chair for his appointment as chair for this committee. Hammerhead sharks are very important in my country, Sierra Leone, in the artisanal fisheries sector, the small-scale fisheries. Our people are dependent upon it for food and subsistence. So regulating international trade and illegal trade of hammerhead sharks is very important. And we are happy that their current status meets the criteria for their listing in Appendix 2 of CITES. Sierra Leone, therefore, support this proposal and would like to thank the proponents for this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Colombia, then Japan. And there's more parties appearing, but we're running out of time, so if people could be very brief, please. Colombia, you have the floor, then Japan.
Gracias, señor presidente. Colombia quiere expresar en calidad de coproponente su apoyo a la propuesta y agradecer a la Unión Europea la presentación de la misma. Gracias.
Thank you. I give the floor to Japan, followed by Argentina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Japan appreciates the proponents to introduce this proposal. We see that some species in the lookalike species have different habitat and can be readily differentiated from others. So therefore, we do not support the entire proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. Before I continue, I'm going to ask the interpreters. It's been a long day and we've got an evening session to come, but are they able to give us another 5 to 10 minutes? Okay. Thank you very much for your kindness, and I do appreciate it. Thank you. So the next on my list, we've only got 5 more parties, so if you could keep your interventions really brief, please. So I'll give the floor to Argentina, followed by Kenya, then Gabon.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente, y en aras del tiempo queremos expresar que apoyamos esta propuesta.
Thank you, Argentina. That's commendably brief. Kenya, you have the floor.
Chair, like previous speakers, Kenya, to be brief, will support the adoption of Proposal 38 on sovereignty. Thank you.
Thank you. And if all the remaining parties could be equally brief, Gabon, then Bahrain, then Somalia.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Comme vous l'avez suggéré, je serai très brève. Le Gabon appuie cette proposition et on félicite les co-auteurs. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Bahrain, you have the floor, followed by Somalia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To be brief, Bahrain is supporting the Proposal 38 to include the species in Appendix 2, as it may not be possible to distinguish their fins from those listed species. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I think I then said Somalia. So Somalia, you have the floor.
Thanks, Chair, to give me the floor. It's great to see hammerhead shark today is in discussion. I'm sure hammerhead is in danger and needs to be protected. I strongly support to be in Index 1, to be listed in Index 1, and to be aware for extension. In Somalia, it's important for us, and we appreciate to be supported this proposal. Thank you.
So I would quite like to wrap this proposal up, really, before we break. I've heard almost nothing but support, and I think the only doubt or opposition was expressed. Oh, right, okay, we'll see one request from the floor from observers. I haven't opened the floor for observers yet. I'll just sum up where I've got to at the moment, but then I will give you the floor. I know you were unhappy that you didn't get the floor on the previous proposal. Lots of support for the proposal. It looks like there's a very broad consensus across parties. I'll come back to Japan in one moment. I'll give the Brazilian Institute for Nature Conservation. Sorry, okay, we've got more observers now. I will take FAO, then the Brazilian Institute for Nature Conservation, and that's it. Extremely brief comments. Please, FAO, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The FAO expert panel concluded that bonnerhead sharks meets the criteria for listing in Appendix 1. There's a range of information about the stock status of the various areas. A word of caution from the expert panel was the bonnet head shark is often used for domestic consumption. As such, it is unclear as to whether the fin trade would be a significant driver in exploitation levels in comparison to domestic use, and therefore care should be taken in strengthening local fisheries controls in concert with any upgrading of trade controls. In regards to lookalike provisions, a previous expert panel review of the separate hammerhead proposal stated it is not clear why the other species of the Sphaeronidae were not proposed to be lookalikes. In comment on the likelihood for achieving a good conservation outcome, because of the evolving taxonomy of the family and known identification problems, the expert panel noted that management measures developed by competent authorities for this group would generally be better applied at the family level. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, FAO. The Brazilian Institute for Nature Conservation, and that's it. I'm closing the floor to observers.
Gracias, señor presidente. Le agradezco la inmensa generosidad de dejar que por lo menos una voz de la sociedad civil de Latinoamérica hable en una reunión de esta convención hecha en Latinoamérica y no solamente las grandes ONGs del norte, que son siempre las que son reconocidas para hablar en los temas importantes de esta convención. En nombre del Instituto Brasileño de Conservación de la Naturaleza, el Instituto Ballena Gilbarta, Divers for Sharks y la coalición Un Solo Mar de ONGs de Brasil y Uruguay, además de otras voces de Latinoamérica que están aquí pero no las dejan hablar, quería apoyar rotundamente esta propuesta y nada más decir que estamos extremadamente contentos de ver que al contrario de lo que pasa en otras agencias de Naciones Unidas, esta convención no se deja secuestrar por los intereses de la mafia de la sobrepesca industrial. Muchas gracias.
Thank you for your comments. I've heard overwhelming support. I think the only reservations expressed were those by Japan, and I wonder if I could go back to Japan and ask them, are they willing to go along with the consensus in the room here and allow us to adopt this proposal? You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. If this committee have a general consensus, we never against this proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Japan. I think with that we can adopt this proposal by consensus. That concludes discussion of Proposal 38. I'll check with the Secretariat in a minute if there are any announcements before we close. A reminder that we have an evening session beginning at 7 p.m. And we will continue with an amended program with plant proposals, starting with Proposal 47. Secretariat?
Thank you, Chair. Just two working groups meeting this evening at 5:15. First of all, the Marine Turtles Working Group is meeting in the America 3 room at 5:15. And then the World Wildlife Trade Report Working Group is meeting in ISMO 2, also at 5:15. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for your participation. It's been a long afternoon, but a productive one, I hope. A reminder, again, if you can make sure that your delegations know the amended program for this evening so that we have participation and a quorum. And to close, I'll just thank the interpreters again for their indulgence. I'm very grateful. Thank you. Good night.